Welcome to this episode of The More You Know, a series of short videos produced by the Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resource Services Area 13 partners. Service Area 13 consists of Berks, Lebanon, and Lancaster counties, and it's one of the 15 service areas across the Commonwealth that exist to provide long-term living information and resources for persons aged 60 and over, persons with a disability, veterans, family members, and caregivers. Hello and welcome to this episode. My name is Margie Degler Pizarro. I am your host for this series. I am a geriatric and palliative care nurse practitioner who is a passionate advocate for abundant living and aging. The Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resources is part of a nationwide network developed to take a seamless approach in the way that we assist seniors and adults with disabilities who need activities of daily living assistance. When you need long-term living information or assistance, call the Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resource Center toll-free hotline at 1-800-753-8827. The title of today's episode is Getting to Know Domestic Violence Intervention of Lebanon County Incorporated. And with me today is my guest, Mike Ritter, the Deputy Director. And as always, the purpose for today's interview is to bring a renewed awareness of this very vital service and discuss it in detail so that our service providers, as well as those persons who may need this important service, have a reliable and up-to-date source of information. And Mike, thank you so much for being here today. Could you tell us a little bit about how you work with the organization? And if you could sum up in a few sentences exactly Domestic Violence Intervention's mission statement, what would you tell us?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, Margie, for allowing me to have some time with you today to talk about our agency. DVI has been working in the Lebanon County community since 1990, so over 3 decades of service to the community. I've spent a little over the last 10 years with the agency. I originally started as the public education coordinator, doing a lot of trainings and presentations and community outreach, and more recently transitioned into the role of deputy director, where I still sort of maintain that external outreach arm of what I do, but I'm looking a little bit more internally to working a little bit more with our advocate staff in shelter, working with the survivors and making sure that we help them out in the most effective way that we can. And overall, I would say what we really aim to do, I'll put it into 4 words, is justice, autonomy, restoration, and safety. These are sort of these 4 key pillars that we look to help victims and survivors of domestic violence be empowered to find these things or create them in their own lives for themselves.
And those are truly very empowering statements. And I was so impressed when I reviewed your website, how many fantastic videos that you have to help individuals that may be experiencing some sort of domestic violence. So if you would, could you expound on all the programs that you have and how you help these individuals?
Sure. So the first thing I'd like to do is just let the folks watching this video understand that because domestic violence does not discriminate, DVI does not discriminate either. And so our services are available to anybody across Lebanon County who identifies as a victim or survivor of domestic violence. And not even domestic violence, which we might also call intimate partner violence, but also abuse in later life, child abuse, stalking, harassment, bullying, and even human trafficking. All these things that we sort of call power-based personal violence. And so all of our services are available to folks who are struggled with these things either currently or in their past. So that might be women, it might be children. We also serve men, we serve seniors, we serve members of the community who identify as being LGBTQ+. And so pretty much a lot of people knock on our door and call our hotline, and we're available to help all of those folks. So a lot of the, the basic services that we provide to help survivors find empowerment are at the absolute top. We always maintain the absolute highest level of confidentiality for folks so that we can help them, find and maintain safety. We also have a secured 24-hour-a-day emergency shelter that's available for folks who would benefit from needing to be placed somewhere else, maybe outside of the home, or maybe they're homeless in some way because of the violence. We have this shelter service offered to them. And then when folks come into shelter, we have a variety of other services that we engage them in. So one of these things is what we call empowerment-based counseling. So this is a little bit different from therapy. It's more about reframing mindsets about being a victim of domestic violence. It's educating people about what does that mean? What does a healthy relationship look like? And helping them to understand these things are not their fault. There are things that happen to them, but there's strategies that we can employ to help them move forward. We also then engage folks in a process of goal planning, which often centers on finding housing that's more permanent, employment, if that's something that they would benefit from, and childcare usually connects really closely with those things as well. And we always talk to everybody about how to be safe, right? So we go through the safety planning process. So if you're going to work or school, or maybe even for folks who, in some cases, leaving an abusive environment isn't the safest thing. So how can you find safety in that environment? So we're always talking to people about how can you maintain safety. And the counseling, the goal planning, the safety planning, those are all services that we provide to folks who aren't in shelter as well. So folks can call us and set up an appointment, or do it over the phone, or do it virtually. Now we can do that too, and have these conversations with an advocate. And then another specific service that we offer to folks is we walk them through some financial empowerment. And the reason we do that is because finance is really the number one barrier for victims and survivors to get help. And so, a couple of things we do to break down those barriers is, first of all of our services are free. And we really mean free. People don't need to have insurance or anything like that. And so we also want to engage people, though, in this intentional process of, how do we maybe restore or build credit? How do we work through paying down debts? How do we maybe even just open a bank account? Maybe that's never been a thing before for some folks. And so we have a curriculum that we help people kind of walk through, helps them find some financial independence. So that, I think that's a lot of what we do, sort of in a very direct way in shelter. And then the other primary service that we offer to folks is sort of offsite. We have an offsite office. It's currently inside the law library on the third floor of the Lebanon County Courthouse. And that's our PFA office, or Protection from Abuse office. And so folks can go in there and petition the court for a civil protective order. We have 2 advocates that work in that office. And it's just important for folks to understand that those are DVI advocates. They work with us and for us. And so even though they're located at the county building, they're very intimately linked with the other services that we try to offer to folks.
And I understand, has it been since 2015, the Protection from Abuse Act and order that is available in Pennsylvania is very, very helpful. And I imagine your staff, when someone would go in to apply for that, could give them direction about that. Is that right, Mike?
Well, absolutely. Our advocates are very great at basically helping people through the process, through the entire time. Right from the initial interview through the hearing before the judge, and then even afterwards, there's different, offices that need to be stopped by and copies made and things like that. So our advocates walk people through that process. They can coach people through or even accompany them in some cases to court hearings. We don't provide legal representation, so we can't actually sit with them up at the table, but we can kind of let them know in advance what to expect, be available to them afterwards for some emotional support, things like that. So yeah, it's very much this walk through process because we understand it can be intimidating, it can be confusing, and so we want to make sure that victims and survivors feel comfortable walking through that process. So we do whatever we can to support them.
And as a potential victim may be finding this interview and saying, oh, I finally have help in Lebanon County. How do they reach out to you? How do they find you? Can you
Sure.
share that?
So the best first way to contact us is we do run a free confidential 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365 days a year crisis hotline. And that phone number is 717-273-7190. So it's important, I think, for folks to understand that when you do call, we usually just say hello or hello, how may I help you? We don't self-identify through the hotline. But you can rest assured that the person who's answering that phone is trained and they're at the ready, they're caring and they're compassionate, and they have all the skills and tools that are needed to help people start their process to finding the justice, autonomy, restoration, and safety.
Wonderful. And can you think of a recent example where someone may have gone through your program and gotten that help that they needed?
Sure. I actually think about in terms of a story that would maybe fit more like a senior population. This wasn't recent, it was a number of years ago, but it's one of these things that I'm very proud of how we were able to help this person. So I like to share it when I can. And I think I actually had the initial contact with this woman. She was a senior woman and she was very ill and she was basically house ridden and not very mobile. She was on a lot of medication and assistive devices to help her manage her illnesses. And she managed to be able to contact us on our hotline. And in getting her story, we came to learn that her husband was withholding life-saving medication from her. And I think that's a really important thing to understand. The senior population, that's kind of a unique tactic of power and control in these kinds of relationships around medication. We don't necessarily see that in younger couples. And I was really proud that we were able to work with the court system in Lebanon County and have her petition for a PFA order over the phone, which is not standard practice, and actually grant her this PFA, which would PFAs generally give the court system the ability to compel an abuser to leave the home. And so that way we could get them separated and then engage other partners in the community to help this woman in her home and make sure she's getting her medication administered to her in an appropriate fashion. So that's not an everyday kind of example. It's maybe a unique example of sorts, but it's one of those things where, again, I think I'm just proud of what we were able to do and in tandem with our local partners in the community to help this woman out. So
And it
there's
brings to home the fact that abuse can happen to anyone, any place, any age.
absolutely, yeah. Again, it doesn't discriminate. So it affects everybody potentially from all walks of life and all backgrounds.
So again, as people are listening, how do they get in touch with you?
Again, our hotline number is 717-273-7190. And if you just want some general information, you can visit our website. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Terrific. Mike, thank you so much for this excellent presentation, information that everyone in a situation of potential abuse needs to know about, and especially in your area, Lebanon County. So thank you for sharing The More You Know by the Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resource Service Area 13 Partners Network. My name is Margie Degler Pizarro, and I thank you for joining us today. Be well, and remember, when you need long-term information or assistance, call the Pennsylvania Link to Aging and Disability Resource Center toll-free helpline at 1-800-753-8827. And I'm going to put that information on the screen right now as a slide. And there you have it. Mike, thank you again for taking time out of your, I know, very, very busy schedule. This is such helpful information. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Margie.
Take care.
You too.